I'll never forget the moment the tires screamed and the HOA princess's jaw hit the floor. It happened on a sun-scorched afternoon in the middle of our town's annual 4th of July car show, an event where every rich neighbor tried to one-up the next with their shiny chrome monsters and candy-coated muscle machines. But this year, it was different. Because my wife pulled up in her rust-spotted 2007 baby blue Subaru hatchback, and everyone, especially the HOA president's spoiled daughter, Tiffany, just couldn't wait to tear her apart. Is that a car or lunchbox with wheels? Tiffany had giggled, flipping her blonde hair and sipping her pink iced drink like she was in a fashion commercial. The other teens, all dressed in designer jeans and pastel polos, laughed hard. My wife, Emily, didn't flinch. She just tightened her ponytail, looked at me with that fire in her eyes, and said calmly, "Let them laugh. They have no idea what this baby can do." But when the car engines roared at the track later that evening, and the HOA president himself entered his brand new Mustang GT into the father-daughter race, my wife stepped forward and said, "I'm racing." Everyone froze. "You? Against a Mustang?" "Against me," barked HOA President Ronald Harding, his face redder than a cherry firecracker. Tiffany rolled her eyes so hard they nearly popped out. And then, with one flick of her wrist, Emily turned the key. The Subaru's engine snarled to life like a sleeping beast, and the moment the light turned green, she left them in the dust. The Mustang didn't even see her coming. And then, bang! A massive pop echoed across the track. Crowds gasped. Smoke poured from the Mustang. Tiffany screamed. And Emily? Emily slid into a perfect drift across the finish line, her hand out the window like she was just cruising to grab groceries. But as Ronald stormed out of his steaming hood, something even more shocking happened. Emily calmly stepped out, opened her trunk, and said the words that dropped jaws for miles. "This car? It belonged to my father. A real racer. He beat you once too. Ask your wife about Daytona 89. Daytona 89. Ronald repeated in a strangled voice, like he'd just swallowed a bug. Emily didn't blink. She folded her arms and looked him dead in the eyes. "Yeah," she said. "You remember him. Carl Walker. My dad." It was like someone hit pause on the whole world. People started whispering. Someone even dropped a hot dog. Tiffany blinked at her dad like he was suddenly made of glass. "He's lying, right?" she said, tugging at his sleeve. "Tell me she's lying, Dad." But Ronald wasn't looking at his daughter. He was looking at the Subaru. His face had gone pale. His lips trembled like they were trying to form a defense, but nothing came out. Emily stepped forward, calm but fierce. "You cheated that race," she said again. "Pushed him into a wall on lap 12. He would have won Daytona that year. He had the lead. But you clipped his bumper, totaled his car, and smiled for the cameras like you earned it." Ronald opened his mouth, but Emily held up her hand. "No, I'm not here to fight old battles," she said. "I'm here to show you something my dad never got to do. I'm here to finish the race he started." Gasps. A long silence. Then, cheers erupted. Claps from the crowd. Teenagers looked around like they were suddenly ashamed to have laughed earlier. And Tiffany? She stormed off, her cheeks burning like chili peppers. "Now let me take you back, before the engine smoke, the drift, the humiliation of a Mustang, back to where it really began. We had just moved into the Pinehurst Ridge Estates, one of those gated suburban neighborhoods where the bushes were always trimmed too square, and the grass looked fake even when it was real. You know the type, American flags on every porch, six-figure SUVs in every driveway, and an HOA that could fine you for sneezing too loudly. My name's Ben Carter. I'm a mechanic by trade. My wife Emily's a librarian. We're simple people. We don't flaunt much, but we'd saved for years to get out of our tiny apartment in Columbus and finally settle down somewhere nice. Problem is, Pinehurst Ridge was too nice. The kind of place where community means conformity. And the head of all that was none other than Ronald Harding, retired colonel, HOA president, and proud owner of the shiniest Mustang GT in town. Ronald ran the HOA like a drill sergeant. He had rules about lawn height, trash can placement, even curtain colors. But his biggest prize? His daughter Tiffany. Tiffany wasn't just rich, she knew it. 18 years old, all sass, sunglasses, and sass again. The kind of girl who would mock your shoes before even saying hi. And she had her own little fan club, too, other spoiled teens from HOA families who copied her every word. They drove around the neighborhood in fancy convertibles that parents bought them. But the worst part? They loved to bully. The day we moved in, she rolled up in that little blue beast, loaded with our boxes, a library sticker, still stuck on the back, and a dented rear bumper from the day a mail truck backed into her in 2013. From our first hour in Pinehurst Ridge, it was obvious. The car stuck out like a sore thumb in a diamond store. Tiffany spotted it immediately. "OMG," she had said, pretending to gag. Someone brought a hobo mobile into the neighborhood. I saw Emily's eyes twitch just slightly. But she said nothing. We spent the rest of the week unpacking, dodging judgmental stares, and getting passive-aggressive HOA welcome letters stuffed in our mailbox. But Emily was quiet. She didn't rant. She didn't fight back. Instead, she polished the Subaru every evening, tuned it, adjusted it, tightened bolts. And then I remembered. Her dad had been a street racer, a legend back in his day. He'd built that Subaru with his bare hands and taught Emily everything. It wasn't a car, it was a legacy. When the 4th of July car show was announced, Ronald strutted through the neighborhood like a rooster. "Biggest car show in the state, folks. We'll be holding it right on the HOA track. No amateurs allowed." Tiffany added her own flair, laughing, "Unless they are bringing junkyard chic like Mrs. Subaru." And that's when Emily said it, just loud enough for me to hear. "I'm racing." I blinked. "You're what?" She looked at me with a tiny grin. "I'm going to smoke her daddy." The days before the race, Emily worked like a ghost in the garage. She rewired the system, replaced spark plugs, tuned the exhaust. Every evening, I saw sparks flying, grease on her cheek, her hair tied up tight in a bandana. I offered to help, but she just smiled and said, "This is between me and him. This car and I, we've waited long enough." The night before the race, she pulled out a dusty photo of her and her dad at a racetrack. "That Mustang guy," she whispered. "He mocked my father once. Beat him in a Dota race and bragged about it for years. But my dad rebuilt the car. This one. He called it the Blue Storm." Goosebumps ran down my arm. When we showed up at the track, people laughed. I mean full-on Bella laughed. Ronald's Mustang sat, gleaming like a trophy. Tiffany had even posted a live video mocking us. "Watch this, folks," she said. "The blue toaster's about to explode." But Emily stepped onto that starting line like a warrior. Ronald smirked. "Don't crash. I'd hate to see you fined for oil stains on my track." Crack. She drifted the turn. Tires screeching. Dust cloud. And then she was gone. Across the finish line. The crowd stood silent. Ronald's jaw was unhinged. Emily stepped out, cool as ever. Opened the trunk. "This car," she said calmly, "my dad built it. You know him. Daytona '89. You cheated that race too." The entire crowd spun to stare at Ronald. And Tiffany? She dropped her phone. Emily folded her arms and looked at him dead in the eyes. "You should have fixed the past instead of burying it." Then, she handed him an old racing photo. It was Carl and Ronald, side by side. On the back, a handwritten message from Carl. "I forgive you, even if you'll never admit it. But one day, my daughter will show you what real racing looks like." Ronald's hands trembled. He didn't speak. And that's when Tiffany screamed, "She cheated. That car's illegal. She's not even HOA certified." Emily turned, smiled, and said, "That's funny, because I just filed to run for HOA president." The moment Emily said, "I just filed to run for HOA president," a hush swept through the crowd like a gust of wind before a tornado. Even the barbecue grill guy stopped flipping burgers. Ronald's face went from pale to blood red in half a second. He looked like someone had hit him with a frying pan full of truth. "You what?" Tiffany shrieked. "That's not allowed. You're new. You can't run." Emily calmly handed a folder to the HOA election official, standing nearby. "Actually," she said, "the HOA rules say any homeowner in good standing can file for candidacy within 48 hours after a major community event. I filed mine at 6 a.m. today." I could barely hold back my grin. That morning, While Tiffany was busy filming herself trying on sequin jumpsuits for the race, Emily and I were at the HOA office, paperwork in hand, ready to shake the system. Ronald snatched the papers and flipped through them like they were poison. "You're wasting your time," he growled. "No one here would vote for you." Emily tilted her head. "Maybe. But they just saw what happens when people write others off because of how they look, or what they drive." Then she turned to the crowd. "I may not have the fanciest house or the cleanest lawn, but I do believe in fairness. And I believe this HOA needs change." Half the people in the audience started clapping. The other half looked stunned. Tiffany was practically vibrating. "This is a joke," she screamed. "Dad, do something." But Ronald wasn't moving. Because deep down, I think even he knew, he'd just been outclassed. And by the very same family he tried to bury decades ago. The next morning, the HOA Facebook group exploded. "Did you see her win that race? She was so cool, just destroyed the Mustang. I heard she's Carl Walker's daughter. Wait, she's running for HOA president." We didn't post anything. We didn't need to. The truth was doing the work for us. But just as the support began to pour in, the smear war began. Ronald might have been exposed, but he wasn't finished. The next day, HOA members started receiving anonymous mailers. Big glossy papers. Headlines like, "Who is Emily Walker really? From racing to reckless, the truth behind her husband's garage. Can we trust a loner librarian with our community?" They dug up everything they could: old car violation tickets, her father's racing ban after the Daytona crash, which was never proven but heavily speculated, and even screenshots of our 5-year-old's mud pie business listed as an authorized sales operation. It was ridiculous, but effective. Some neighbors began to whisper again. One even crossed the street instead of waving back. I asked Emily, "Should we fight back?" She shook her head. "Not with more mud. We'll fight with facts. And kindness. My dad always said, if they throw dirt, you bring pavement." 3 days before the rematch race, Tiffany did something no one expected. She showed up at our doorstep. Alone. No makeup. No followers. No phone out filming. Just Tiffany. She looked like a balloon that had lost all its air. "I need to talk," she said. We invited her in. She sat quietly for a minute before speaking. "That notebook. I confronted my mom," she said. "She cried for 2 hours. Told me there was an agreement. Ronald's not my real dad. My real dad was one of her college friends." She looked at Emily with wide, red eyes. "Everything I thought was true isn't. I mocked you. Called your dad a joke. Laughed at your car. But at least your dad was real." Emily sat beside her. And what she did next blew me away. She hugged her. Not with pity. With understanding. "You didn't know," Emily said softly. "But now you do. You get to choose what kind of person you'll be from here." Tiffany cried. And in that moment, I swear something inside her shifted. The next morning, Tiffany posted a video. But this time, it wasn't filtered, scripted, or fake. She sat on the hood of Emily's Subaru in jeans and a plain t-shirt. And she spoke to the camera. "Hi, my name's Tiffany Harding. And I want to tell you something. I was wrong. About everything. About Emily. About her car. About her dad. I grew up thinking I had to be better than everyone. That I had to win. But Emily just wanted justice. She raced with honor. She's running for president with truth. And I'm voting for her. Also, yeah, she smoked my dad fair and square. Deal with it." The video went viral in the community. Even neighbors who had been skeptical began to shift. Maybe Emily's the real deal. She turned that spoiled girl around. Imagine what she could do with our HOA. Can we get her to fix the pool budget too? Election day and race day was set for the same Saturday. The rematch was hyped up like a neighborhood Super Bowl. But Ronald? He had one more move left. The night before the race, someone broke into the town storage garage. Security cameras caught a dark figure sneaking in with wire cutters and tools. When we arrived the next morning, ready to prep the Subaru, we found the trunk popped open and wires dangling. But this time, we were ready. Because Emily had set up her own camera. And the footage? Clear as day. Ronald. Breaking into our car. Caught. Red-handed. We didn't shout. We didn't fight. We just sent the video to the entire HOA board group chat with one line. This is who you trust to lead you. Later that afternoon, the track was full. News vans. Reporters. Even the mayor showed up to watch. Ronald stood at the starting line, face pale, hands shaking. Emily stepped forward, wearing her father's original Daytona '89 jacket. Tiffany stood beside her, arms crossed, a determined look on her face. Then, for the first time since we moved to Pinehurst Ridge, the crowd cheered louder for us than for him. Engines revved. The flag went up. And just before the green light flashed, Ronald shouted across the line, "Emily, if you win this, I resign from the HOA." Emily didn't flinch. She gripped the wheel and whispered, "Then start packing, Ronald." Light flashes, engines roar, race begins. The green light flashed. Engines exploded like cannons across the track. Emily's Subaru surged forward, smooth, clean, and precise. Her grip on the wheel was steady, eyes locked on the horizon. Beside her, Ronald's Mustang screamed down the straightaway like a wild animal unleashed. The crowd roared. It wasn't just a race now. It was everything. Legacy, justice, truth. It was a daughter fighting for her father's honor, and a community watching to see if decency could outrun decades of control. Tiffany stood with me at the edge of the stands, her hands clasped, eyes wide. "She's got this," I whispered. "I hope so," she replied. "For all our sake." Ronald took the inside curve fast, too fast. His tires screeched as the Mustang slipped wide. Emily stayed tight on her line, cutting like a knife through air. The Subaru hugged the track like it was built for this. Because it was. Emily's father had tuned that suspension for turns like this. And Ronald? He was driving with ego, not precision. Lap 1. Emily ahead by a nose. Inside her helmet, Emily wasn't just thinking about the track. She was remembering. Her father teaching her to shift gears by feel, not sound. How he let her sit on his lap and steer when she was barely tall enough to see over the dash. How he smiled, even after losing everything. "You race with heart," he always said. "That's something no cheat can ever steal." And now, she wasn't racing against Ronald. She was racing for Carl Walker. Lap 2. Ronald started getting desperate. He inched closer, too close. Suddenly, bam! His front bumper tapped her rear. The Subaru wobbled. The crowd gasped. Did he just try to pit her? Someone yelled. But Emily held strong. She didn't panic. She downshifted, gripped the curve, and used the momentum to slingshot forward, leaving Ronald in the dust. The announcer screamed into the mic. "She's still ahead." And pulling away. The scoreboard lit up, final lap. Ronald floored it. Emily kept her pace. At the final straight, both cars blazed side by side. Smoke. Heat. Tires singing. And then, a snap. Ronald's engine let out a yelp. His overpushed Mustang sputtered, hiccuped, and died. Dead. Mid-track. Silence. Emily roared past the finish line like a blue flame from a forgotten legend. The crowd erupted. People jumped, screamed, clapped. Kids waved signs. Reporters dashed forward. And Ronald? He sat frozen in his dead car, face hollow. The once mighty HOA king had fallen. Minutes later, HOA officials gathered. Tiffany approached the mic before the crowd. She took a deep breath. "My name is Tiffany Harding, and I resign as the HOA Youth Ambassador," she said. "Because my dad taught me power was more important than truth. But today, Emily Walker Carter taught me something else." She turned to Emily. "You didn't just win the race. You won me over. You showed all of us that kindness and courage beat fear every time." Then she pulled a paper from her bag. It was Ronald's signed resignation. He had already filled it out. "I made him sign it," she whispered. The crowd lost it. Cheers, claps. Some people even cried. For the first time in years, Pinehurst Ridge felt free. Later that evening, ballots were counted in front of everyone. The final tally? Emily Walker Carter, 126 votes. Ronald Harding, 18 votes, most from his old golf buddies. Emily was sworn in that night, standing on the hood of the Blue Storm under fireworks and camera lights. She gave a simple speech. I don't want to control this neighborhood. I want to serve it. I want kids to feel safe riding bikes. I want garage doors to be a place of building, not fear. And I want our HOA to remember, we're neighbors first, not rulers. 1 week later, we reopened Carl Walker's old garage, this time under a new name. The Blue Storm Community Garage. Free lessons for kids on engines. A place where neighbors could come tinker, learn, and connect. The same spoiled kids who once mocked Emily? Now they were asking her to teach them how to shift gears. And Tiffany? She volunteered every Saturday. Hair tied back. No phone in hand. Just a wrench and a heart full of purpose. Late one night, Emily and I sat on the hood of the Subaru, sipping sweet tea, watching the stars. You did it, I said. No, she smiled. We did. And so did Dad. She reached into her coat and pulled out the original race photo, Carl and Ronald at Daytona. But this time, she added a new photo beside it. Emily, standing on the track, holding the trophy, and Tiffany beside her, smiling. 2 daughters. 1 truth. And a legacy restored. The crowd slowly began to fade as the stars fully emerged over Pinehurst Ridge. What had started as just another neighborhood drama had turned into something legendary, something the residents would talk about for generations. And Emily? She wasn't done yet. The next morning, she showed up early to the HOA office with a clipboard full of community suggestions. Real suggestions, ones from actual residents, not just rules she made up. Ideas like a community garden where kids could grow their own veggies, a Saturday car clinic where seniors could get free oil checks, a Fix-It Friday where volunteers helped neighbors repair broken fences and leaky taps. People couldn't believe it. An HOA leader who actually helped? Mrs. Simmons from Maple Court brought over cookies just to say thanks. Mr. Alvarez, who used to avoid HOA meetings like the plague, came by and offered to repaint the faded signs around the park. Even Eugene, the man who had found those files from Daytona, stood at Emily's front door with a trembling voice and said, "Your father would be proud." No, he is proud. Emily smiled through misty eyes and gave him a warm hug. Pinehurst Ridge was finally starting to feel like a neighborhood again. And Ronald? He moved out quietly. No grand exit, no speech. Just one U-Haul and a bitter glare. Rumor had it he'd taken a job as a security guard at a car museum 3 towns over. He left behind the Mustang, which Tiffany sold, and donated the money to a local teen driving school. She was different now. Humbled. Wiser. Kinder. One afternoon, I walked into the garage and found her showing a group of kids how to check tire pressure. "No, this is how you avoid blowing a tire at 90 miles per hour, she said, hands on her hips, grinning. Emily watched her with pride. "Think your dad would have believed this?" I asked her. She smiled. "Not a chance. But that's the best part." We all laughed. Then we heard it, the soft rumble of a car pulling into the driveway. It was an old man, thin and weathered, stepping out of a battered sedan. He looked down at the Subaru, then up at Emily. "I used to race against Carl Walker," he said slowly. "I saw what Ronald did that day. I never said anything, but I should have. I came to say thank you for finishing what your father started." Emily didn't reply with words. She simply offered him a wrench. "Want to help me teach these kids how to replace a belt?" He nodded, and for the next hour, the sound of stories, laughter, and tools filled the air. That was the magic of the Blue Storm Garage. It wasn't about cars anymore. It was about community. It was about healing old wounds. And it was about the kind of strength that doesn't scream, but races silently past the finish line while others are too busy bragging to notice. Pinehurst Ridge was never the same again. And we were okay with that. Because for the first time in a long time, we were home.